What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network. Today, we're talking the latest episode of WWE 24 on Kofi Kingston, called The Year of the Return. This originally aired after SummerSlam on Sunday night on the WWE Network. Awesome stuff here. I mean, the 24 specials never cease to disappoint, but this one's especially cool if you've been watching Kofi Kingston since the beginning, over a decade ago. Knowing how hard he worked to get to that WWE Championship match at WrestleMania 35, being at that pay-per-view, seeing it in person, was really cool to have watched this special, to see, how he got from point A to point B over the course of not just a 10-year journey in WWE, but even before that, being from Ghana, starting out in WWE, even before that in Chaotic Wrestling, which is where he trained, knowing that's what he wanted to do for the rest of his life. Everything he had to work, everything he had to overcome to get to this point is really surreal. So definitely check it out on the WWE Network. This one was slightly longer than the other ones. This one clocks in at around an hour and 6 minutes. So, I mean, the 24s are almost always an hour in length anyway. But they're usually around 58, 59 minutes, 69, 60 minutes on the dot. Very rarely do they go over an hour. Like I said, I'd have to go back and look at the timestamps for all the other episodes dating back over the last 4 years, dating back to 2015. But I'm pretty sure this is the longest one I've seen anyway. But well worth the watch. They packed a lot of stuff into this thing. There was also more clips that didn't make the actual special. There were bonus extra clips that WWE put up on their YouTube channel over the course of SummerSlam week, so check those out as well. But anyway, we kick off this special with Kofi Kingston saying, "I think everything happens for a reason," which I completely agree with. He also talks about returning to Ghana for the first time since 1993. Now as the WWE Champion. And that was really the biggest thing from this special. They don't really just talk about Kofi Kingston becoming the new WWE Champion at WrestleMania and the journey that he took to get there, but also him going back to Ghana, because heritage is a really important thing for Kofi. And like he said, the first time since 1993. I think that's when fucking Cool Runnings came out. Ironically enough, because Cool Runnings, Jamaica, that was his initial character. Anyway, that's a long time. That's a really, really long time. So you got to think more than just, I think it's awesome we have our first ever black WWE champion, except for The Rock. I guess The Rock would be the first black WWE champion, but I think people really recognize Kofi as being the first black WWE champion. But not only that, but Ghana. When would you ever have expected a world champion in WWE to come out of Ghana of all places? I'm sure many people, before they even knew who Kofi Kingston was, had no idea what Ghana the country was. Didn't even know that existed. I'm sure I didn't. I know for a fact I didn't before I started to hear that Kofi Kingston was from Ghana, West Africa, that he was being billed from there, and so on and so forth. But yeah, they keep, cutting back to clips of Kofi in Ghana, kind of returning home as the WWE Champion, which is really, really cool. He says that dreams come true is always a cliche for him, but for now, at this point, it's real, because a dream really did come true for him in becoming WWE Champion. So to kick off the special, we see Kofi again back in Ghana, doing a tour of Ghana, of where he came from, seeing what the natives there had to go through many, many years ago, seeing how it turned from a slave castle, as he called it, into a presidency. And they actually called it the Year of the Return. That's where the title of this special comes from, the Year of the Return. I guess this transformation, this transition from what Ghana used to be into what it is now, only really started to happen, apparently, in the last couple of years. And maybe it was even further back than that. But Ghana was in terrible shape a long time ago, according to Kofi. And it really made a turnaround, I guess, just recently. Now that they have their own president, who I guess they really look up to over there, which is awesome. Speaking of whom, Kofi actually meets the president of Ghana in coming home as WWE Champion, which is really cool. Then he talks about his background. He came to the United States at the age of 2, so he was born in Ghana, was, I guess, raised there. For like 2 years. He was still a baby at that point, but he came to the United States at age 2, moved to Boston at that point. So I always thought he was born in Boston, but I guess not. He was born in Ghana, moved to the States at age 2, specifically Boston. He also talks about being at WrestleMania 14, which had the main event of Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Shawn Michaels for the WWE Championship. And, you hear this from a lot of people, but in going to WrestleMania 14, he knew at that point that he wanted to be a WWE superstar. There was nothing else he wanted to do more than become a professional wrestler. He actually made a belt, like a little professional wrestling belt for himself in high school, and all of his friends would make fun of him for it. And, look at him now. He's now the WWE Champion. How cool is that? He did amateur wrestling, and I'm sure he's not alone in doing this, but he actually did amateur wrestling in high school, which I did not know, because he thought it was WWE wrestling. I'm sure, again, a lot of people did that same thing and are likely still doing it today because they're big WWE fans, and they think, oh, my team has my school has a wrestling team. Why not join it? Because I'm a big WWE fan. Little do they know, it's actually an amateur wrestling team, which is far different than WWE. But he did really well, made all states, nationals, the whole 9 yards. And at that point, he made a video for Tough Enough. His friends helped him out. He did a little audition video, and he calls it cringeworthy. And you watch it back. I mean, I think it's funny looking it back 20 years later. But yeah, Kofi actually auditioned for Tough Enough. I don't think he ever made it to the tryout process. I mean, obviously, they would have covered it here if he did. But he did audition for it via a video that he sent in, probably in high school, early college years. But anyway, he calls it cringeworthy. And he also talks about how he graduated from college and he got a job at Staples soon after. But he knew in walking in there and just sitting down at the cubicle, looking down at the computer, that this is really something he did not want to do. He knew this is something that, okay, I'm not going to be happy here, and he knew he wasn't going to last. So that was when he started to train for wrestling. He would work at Staples, I guess go to the wrestling school, Chaotic, to be specific, soon after work, right after Staples. So he would drive from home to Staples, then from there to wrestling school. And he had his dad's support, he had his wife's support. I mean, it was his girlfriend at the time, but he met his girlfriend in high school, and they've been together ever since. But when the first day that he walked into that school, he felt a lot better walking in there than he did his first day at Staples, because he knew walking in there, that was something he wanted to do. This is something he was passionate about, and this was something he wanted to do for the rest of his life. And he also told a funny story here, I think I'd never heard this story before. There were a few things he talked about here on this 24 that I have heard before from other interviews that he's done. I've never heard this story before, where he said that on his way to either wrestling school or Staples, anytime he was in the car, he would listen to a Damian Marley CD. I don't know who Damian Marley is. I thought he was going to say Bob Marley. I don't even know if he's Jamaican, but Damian Marley. He would listen to Damian Marley while driving anywhere. And I guess he had a Jamaican accent, so he would mimic his Jamaican accent, because he knew that to be a wrestler, you had to have some sort of a character. And because he knew he can master this accent, that he could be a great character as this Jamaican wrestler. So he made his Chaotic debut soon after, and at one of the shows, Steve Kern attended, one of the head officials at FCW at that time. Maybe not FCW, I think it might have been OVW at that point, back in 2006. Whatever they were using as their developmental territory. He was there. Kofi Kingston was like the one guy on the show that stuck out to him as a guy that he knew could make it with enough development. And it wasn't really that long of a process at all. By September of 2006, he was signed by the WWE to a developmental deal. And then right after that, he was told that he'd be on the road and filming vignettes for his eventual ECW debut. Now, he did not make his ECW debut until January, I think. Yeah, January of 2008 on the ECW brand. But I think in the meantime, he worked a lot of FCW shows in 2007. But yeah, the vignettes he was filming were the Jamaican vignettes we would see leading up to his debut on ECW. Now, if you've never seen them before, they're all over YouTube. They're on the network on these episodes of ECW from early 2008. But basically what they were, it was Kofi walking on the beach, presumably in Jamaica, saying that there would be no trouble in paradise. That's where his finisher name came from, because he was stopping these people from wreaking havoc on the beach. And he said, oh, there will be no trouble in paradise. And again, my accent's atrocious, I apologize. But that was basically the gist of the vignettes. He told this story on Talk is Jericho a couple of years ago, where he listened. So I guess they would have these headsets where you can listen into what the commentators are saying from backstage, and, Vince and all the production people, whatever. So he listened in one day before his debut. I think it was actually right when the vignettes started to air on ECW. He picked up a headset to hear what the production people were saying about his vignette. Vince actually chimes in and says, this is barely passable. And this is your television show. And he told this story. I mean, he didn't say it here, but he said it on the Jericho podcast years ago, where he goes dude, this is your show. You're booking this shit. If it's barely passable, then why are you doing it? This was your idea. But it was super funny. He was nervous at that point. Shit, we got 6 more of these things to go. Am I gonna be fired? Am I gonna be able to stick around? I don't know. And obviously he did. He debuted on the brand in January of 2008. And the big question for him and a lot of other people at that point, why isn't he representing Ghana? Like, why wouldn't he just represent where he's from? He actually said here that he did not want to be built from Ghana initially because he didn't want to play the stereotypical, I don't know what a Ghanaian, if that's what you call the natives from Ghana. I'm not sure what the right word would be to use, but I don't know what the stereotype of that would be because I don't think we've ever had a wrestler come from Ghana before, at least on this level. So I'm not sure what they would have done if he wasn't Jamaican, but he didn't want to offend his own country by being billed from there and then being given this character that was like either racist or stereotypical, whatever. So he actually got like lambasted by this interviewer in July of 2008 from the BBC, who kind of put a spin on it. He spun it and said that Kofi was willing to deny where he was from in order to make it. And Kofi said that was not the case at all. He's very proud of where he's from. He's very proud of his heritage. And he was like, okay, something's got to change eventually. So by October of 2009, he dropped the accent on an episode of Monday Night Raw. Now, anyone who was watching the show at that point remembers this very clearly because it was on like the go-home show for bragging rights. And Kofi was in the ring with like Triple H and Shawn Michaels and Cody Rhodes, Big Show, and I think someone else. Maybe Jack Swagger, someone like that. So Kofi gets in the ring, and they're all fighting. Kofi says, okay, we got to get back on the same team, get back on the same page, blah, 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 blah. But he all says it in his normal voice, no Jamaican accent. Triple H acknowledged it, and he goes, hey, wait a second. I got a question. No, wait, I got a problem. Aren't you supposed to be Jamaican? And then Kofi, acted surprised, and that was it. That was all they had to do, and that was all they had to say to take him in an entirely new direction and acknowledging where he was actually from, that being Ghana, West Africa. Then he was allowed to really be himself by that point. He talked about how, again, heritage is very important to him, and it was his goal upon coming to WWE that he wanted to win every championship title they had. And of course, when that type of thing is in someone else's hands, it's not all that realistic. But over time, he started to win a lot of different championships. The Intercontinental Championship multiple times. The Tag Team titles multiple times. The United States Championship multiple times. And then he's like, okay, maybe this can be an attainable goal at some point. Maybe this is something I can actually do. Brief sidebar here. We hear from Zack Ryder, Kurt Hawkins, one of the Usos who are very good friends with Kofi. They talk about how even when it wasn't Kofi Kingston's moment, he would never cease to steal that moment. So they talk about his history in the Royal Rumble match. We don't actually hear from Kofi about it, but we hear from the aforementioned superstars. And they talk about how it's become his thing over the last, 5, 6, 7, 8 years to go into the Royal Rumble and steal the show, do something cool, and make people remember him, even if it wasn't his time to win the whole thing. I still think in retrospect it would have been cool if they had Kofi Kingston finally win the Rumble this year, especially knowing that he would go on to become WWE Champion at WrestleMania anyway, but the story worked out perfectly the way that it was, so it really doesn't matter. But in retrospect, it's like, what if? What if they actually had Kofi win the Rumble instead of Rollins? That would have been pretty cool. Like a winner that nobody saw coming. Because even at that point, they weren't even close to WWE Championship contention. Kofi Kingston wasn't, that is. Anyway, so he talks about or his wife actually mentioned here that Kingston had all these ideas that weren't being used. Now, she also said that Kofi wasn't a complainer. He wasn't one to get frustrated. He would always do what was asked of him and do it to the best of his ability. But it was getting to a point where Kofi would see all these other people getting opportunities ahead of him, people that debuted after him, people like Alberto Del Rio and Jack Swagger, people like that, sending the message to him, okay, this person is being passed, I'm being passed over for this person, that person's better than me, that person's world championship material, and I'm not. He kind of recognized at a certain point, okay, I'm the guy to go in there, do all this enhancement stuff, make other people look better. I'm just the guy to go in there and do cool moves. Maybe not always win, be a fan favorite, be a likable guy, but not necessarily win the big one. He always knew that he could be a world champion, but again, knowing that fate was in someone else's hands, he never really got his hopes up thinking that he could be at that level. They never once talked about the Randy Orton stuff either, which I was kind of disappointed about because it's been a big part of his current program with Orton going into SummerSlam and the feud they have going on still even after the pay-per-view. So that was a little disappointing. I guess because they would have put the blame on Randy, which they already did on TV anyway. Unless they started making this after Mania and they're just pushing it out now, I don't know. But it would have been really cool to hear Kofi's perspective, from his perspective, what happened with that whole thing and how he was close to superstardom even at that point. And they showed the goddamn, boom drop at Madison Square Garden to Randy Orton through the commentary table, and nothing. Like, they didn't mention that at all. They didn't really touch upon it whatsoever. Again, I know they're talking about it now on TV, on SmackDown, but it would have been cool if I had any nitpick of this special if they brought that up here too, because that was a big part of his evolution. They talked about him dropping the accent, but not the subsequent feud with Randy Orton that really put him on the map for a time in late 2009. But anyway, in talking about the whole world champion thing, he's like, listen, if you're not happy and thriving, you should probably be doing something else. And I don't know if he kind of related that to himself or what. I'm not really sure, because he was kind of talking about people that are upset they're not being pushed for whatever reason. And he's the type of person, I guess, who always enjoys anything he's involved in, even if it's not exactly what he wants to do. So anyway, he's on the bus in Ghana. He calls up Big E and Xavier, talking about how people were doing this New Day Rocks chant while he was in Ghana randomly, just going to show the worldwide appeal that the New Day has. So anyway, and speaking about the New Day, they talk about the New Day in their background. Originally, the group was supposed to be, about 5 years ago in the summer of 2014, it was supposed to be a group of disgruntled talent. And it was an idea that Xavier and Big E came up with, and they picked Kofi as the third person because they knew they had chemistry with him and that it would work well with him because he had always been there, and it worked perfectly because if there was anyone that was going to be disgruntled in WWE for getting passed over, for opportunities and stuff like that, it was Kofi Kingston in storyline. So they were heel on TV for like a few weeks. The angry trio of Big E, Xavier, and Kofi lasted for all of maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And then they dropped it. They were happy on like the live events. They were like this happy-go-lucky trio. The New Day we see now is what we've seen at live. The New Day we're seeing currently is the New Day they were at that point on the live events in 2014. But Vince didn't really want to put him on TV as that incarnation of New Day. Kofi was just happy to help Big E and Xavier. He knew that. Not that his time was up. The guy had been in the company for only 5 years, 5-6 years at that point, but he wanted to help out the younger talent in Xavier and Big E, knowing that they had a future in the company, in WWE. So they started hanging out together a lot more to build up that chemistry, and even though there was this disconnect with them being kind of like booked as heels on TV and faces on the live events, they went back and forth with Vince for months, for like 4 or 5 months, Kofi says, about what they should do with this gimmick. Ultimately, Vince settled on them being fucking preachers. Yes, they were preachers in the end. They ended up becoming preachers, which is so stupid. And New Day heard him out, and they were like, in their minds, this is so stupid. But to Vince, they're like, yep, this is cool. Okay, yep, this is awesome. We'll make it work, blah, blah, blah. But they knew the entire time, at least Kofi did, that regardless of what they were given, that their chemistry would shine through. And initially, people were just happy that they were doing something, that they were on TV at all, because there was a stretch there in late 2014, they weren't even on the show. From like August to, I want to say, October, November, they weren't even on Raw or SmackDown. They were completely off TV for like a solid 3 or 4 months, just being wasted. They were on the house shows, but not on TV. So although people were initially happy that they were on TV, that didn't last. Before long, people started chanting New Day sucks, and he felt insulted because it's like, listen, we're trying to make this thing work. We're on TV. Just be happy that we're here. The fans didn't see it that way. And it really wasn't until they started doing their own ideas and started to just pop themselves, like make themselves laugh. That was when the tide turned and they started to get over as a popular act in WWE. And now Kofi says, I can't imagine New Day being anything else than what it is currently. We see him back in Ghana where he feels welcome, and he talks about how he likes motivating people to do great things. Anyway, so to fast forward to WrestleMania 35, that's where we kind of catch up here. Him and the New Day weren't really doing anything before WrestleMania 35. If this whole thing for Kofi didn't happen, like the WWE Championship storyline, he likely would have been plugged into the SmackDown Tag Team title match at WrestleMania, which is probably where the New Day would have ended up. They didn't even end up being in that match for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. But anyway, he said that he was told by Road Dogg right before Elimination Chamber that he would not only be in the Chamber match because Ali got hurt, but also that he would be in the Gauntlet match on the SmackDown before the pay-per-view. And he went in there and killed it with, he beat Daniel Bryan, he beat Jeff Hardy, he beat Samoa Joe. But it really wasn't until the run-in with AJ Styles. Styles was his 4th opponent of the night, and after he had gone, I think, a full hour, something near that, he felt the run-in with AJ was symbolic of his entire time in WWE, how he had worked so hard to get where he is, and people were telling him, like, listen, you can slow down, it's okay to just sit back and relax now, but he was a fighter, and he wanted to fight till the end, and he felt good afterward about the whole performance, but it wasn't really until he logged into Twitter after the match where he realized we're onto something here, because people were blowing up over the performance he had in that match. It was a star-making performance, absolutely. And he just started getting bigger and bigger and bigger after Elimination Chamber, where he failed to win the championship originally. People just really wanted to see him win the title. It kept getting bigger and bigger. He admitted that, okay, this is the week where it's not going to be as popular as it was the week before, or this week it's going to slow down. It never did. He just started to get more and more over the week, week after week after week. And he felt that a big part of that was that fans could relate to him, whether they were black or whatever. It doesn't really matter what your skin color is. A lot of people felt they could relate to Kofi and overcoming an obstacle to get to where you want to be. And a lot of people could relate to that. And that was really what played a big part in him, being as popular as he was and still is now in the whole Kofi Mania thing going into WrestleMania 35. And he said that everything he did over the course of his career led up to that point. He also said it would not have been as meaningful as it was if it happened any other way. So again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, where would it have been cool to see him win the Royal Rumble match and go on to WrestleMania that way? Absolutely. But at the same time, the story worked out as perfectly as it did, and Kofi wouldn't change anything about it. I wouldn't change anything about it. The story was just so fucking great. That it really was just great the way it was, and it should not have been tweaked. I think WWE, to their credit, we give them a lot of shit for stuff they do wrong, but when they do it right, they absolutely do it right. And the Kofi Kingston storyline was a prime example of that. So he talked about having a really busy WrestleMania week, but like in the best way possible. He calls WrestleMania an emotionally heavy situation. He wanted to go in there and steal the show, and that's exactly what they did. I don't care what anyone says. WrestleMania 35 was a good show, but the best match on that card, hands down, was Kofi and Daniel Bryan for the WWE Championship. And it's not even close, like I said. Kofi reminisced on how 6 years earlier in that exact same stadium in Newark, New Jersey, I think it's Newark, New Jersey, at WrestleMania 29, MetLife Stadium, he was on the pre-show panel at WrestleMania 29 with, I think, either Josh Matthews or Renee Young, one of the two. And then like with Jim Ross and Dusty Rhodes, doing the whole pre-show panel. He wasn't doing anything at that point. He ended up becoming United States champion a couple weeks later, and they should have done Kingston and Cesaro on the WrestleMania card on the pre-show. They didn't, whatever. But now, 6 years later, he's contending for the WWE Championship at that very exact same arena, which is so fucking cool. His wife admits before the show that WrestleMania was the first time she had been worried about Kofi in a long time. Like the first time she had been really worried for him in a long, long time, knowing that this was it. This was the moment he had really, worked for his entire career. It wasn't until he got to Gorilla before he went out for the match that he started to get emotional, because that for him was when it started to feel real. That was when everything started to pour in that, again, he deserved this, he worked for it, and now he was getting it. And then they show the whole recap of the match and people going crazy. And he says time honestly stopped for a second when he became WWE Champion. Because he couldn't believe that it actually happened. Because he wanted that more than anything. And Big E says, and again, they show all the reactions of people like in the fans, backstage, other talent, other wrestlers like Shad and MVP were crying over it, which is so fucking crazy. That's nuts. Like, that's some heavy stuff right there. That's some really emotional, powerful stuff is the right word I'm looking for. That's some powerful shit right there. But Big E said that moment showed that you can get through anything, regardless of who you are, what your skin color is, what your background is, whatever the case might be. You can get through anything. And then Kofi was congratulated backstage. He said, I'm just an all right now. And he also said, again, talking about the reaction that people had to that match, that outcome specifically, he's happy that him winning a match in pro wrestling can evoke so much positive emotion. It's incredible. And he says that Kofi himself is a reminder of someone who overcame that struggle and that other people can do the exact same thing. And he then thanks the fans for believing in him and just thanks everyone for the opportunity of being able to live out his dream as WWE Champion. And that closes out this outstanding special. I really love this. I love this a lot. This was some great stuff here from Kofi Kingston. We heard from Xavier, Big E, his wife. A lot of other people in WWE. If you're a Kofi Kingston fan, and even if you're not a Kofi Kingston fan, you are bound to enjoy this 24. Again, they never cease to deliver with these 24s. The last couple they've done this year alone have been amazing. The Batista one from, I think, right around Extreme Rules. I think it might have been either that week or right before Stuber came out about a month ago. That one was great. The Ronda Rousey one was awesome. I think a couple months ago, back in June. They did a Becky Lynch one in May. That was amazing. The WrestleMania New Orleans one was phenomenal. They did that right back in, I think, January, focusing on WrestleMania 34. So that's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 24s they did this year. 5 WWE 24s. That's crazy. And they were all great, this one especially. So check it out on the WWE Network. Again, clocks in at around an hour and 6 minutes. So it might be the longest one they've ever done, but it's well worth sitting through, and it doesn't even feel like an hour. I was done with it. I'm like, I thought it was at the fucking 15-minute mark. That's how good this was. So check it out on the WWE Network at your leisure. And that being said, guys, a lot of new network to come, new network content to review and to come here in the days to come on the YouTube channel. A lot to get to, lots to review. So a new Table for 3 actually aired last night after Raw. I didn't think they would air any more new content coming off the new stuff they aired on the network over the course of the weekend, from the Untold with Team Hell No, the Chronicle and Seth Rollins, just everything else, the TakeOver thing. But they did. They aired a new Table for 3, I think with Alexa Bliss, Ember Moon, and Braun Strowman. Really weird trio, but it happened, and it aired last night after all. I might be mistaken on who's involved, but I know Ember's in it, and I know Braun's in it, and probably Alexa too. So I'll get to that at some point. I already have watched the Stone Cold Steve Austin, straight up Steve Austin debut on USA Network after Raw on Monday. Good show. I'll probably review that real quickly and put that up at some point in the next few days over the course of the next week. I'll probably review it just because fuck it, why not? It was good. I enjoyed the debut with, I think it was, God, I forgot the guy's name. Riggle, the guy from Step Brothers, and he's in a lot of other different stuff too. The Hangover. He's like a comedy actor. He was also in the Marines too, something I did not know. But anyway, that will be up here on the channel at some point in the next few days, in addition to my review of Table for 3 that aired after Raw on Monday, and the newest Miz and Mrs. that airs tonight after SmackDown on the USA Network. So a lot of stuff to cover here on Network and Chill in the days to come. That being said, guys, be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content. Very much appreciate the support. As always, guys, have a great rest of your week. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.